As per the nomenclature at Mercedes-Benz, the vehicles that are capable of going off the road usually begin with the letters GL. It's a nod to the Galante wagon or the G-Wagon, its ultimate off-road vehicle in production so far. And then these letters are suffixed with letters like A, C, E or S from Merck's sedan lineup to indicate the level of luxury and equipment that they offer. So for example, the GLE is a vehicle that's capable of going off the road with the equipment or the luxury levels of an E-Class. And that is where things get a little confusing. If that's that, then what's this? This is the E-Class All-Terrain. Unlike the E-Class long wheelbase sedan sold to us, the E-Class All-Terrain is based on the E-Class Estate that was never introduced in the Indian market. Contrary to the preferences of my compatriots though, I like and endorse Estate body styles for the practicality and versatility that they offer, and the E-Class All-Terrain scores plenty of points in that department and then some. So to clear the confusion, the GLE is an SUV with equipment or luxury levels that are comparable to the E-Class, while this is an E-Class with mild off-roading capabilities, and to that effect it gets a higher ride height, adaptive air suspension, higher profile for its tires and rugged cladding all around for protection against stone chips, pebbles or any such debris that the vehicle might kick up. While the E-Class face is familiar, the All-Terrain gets a chunkier perforated grille that comes from the GL lineup. At the rear, a wide chrome bar on the tailgate and the elongated wraparound taillights give the All-Terrain a wide-bodied appearance to visually counterbalance the higher ride height. Now the All-Terrain is targeted towards those who would like to be driven around for most of the week, maybe like to drive over the weekends. It's also meant for those who would like to go grand touring, and then it's an E-Class, so rear seat comfort is very important. Which means it has to be spacious, it has to be well cushioned, it has to be well contoured as well. And the E-Class All-Terrain does all of it quite right. The leg space, the headroom, everything is quite ample. The driver's seat is set to my driving preference and still there is plenty of room in here. Back seat, strictly good for two adults, maybe a kid. You have a high tunnel console here. I do get AC vents on the floor and on the B-pillar. You also get these cup holders, a little bit of storage area in the center armrest. But overall, a very comfortable place to be in. Unlike the E-Class sedan though, you cannot really change the angle of the recline, angle of the backrest. All that is not happening, but in its default setting, in its default position, I think it is quite comfortable. The materials are typical premium E-Class and the equipment is familiar too. Analog instrumentation extending into a 12.3-inch digital infotainment screen, touch-sensitive switches on the steering wheel and ambient lighting with a 64-color palette to choose from. The distinctive elements are the sports seats up front, drilled metal pedals and the all-terrain badging here and there. Apart from the mild off-roading capabilities and the rugged styling, the other keyword for the E-Class All-Terrain is practicality. Right from a foldable basket for your knickknacks, all the way up to this huge 640-litre boot with a wide opening, with a low loading lip. So loading all your cargo is not going to be a problem at all. Now I told you that the recline of the backrest can't be increased for better comfort. However, it can be decreased by 10 degrees for increasing the cargo space by up to 30 litres. And if that is not enough, if you need more space, more versatility, the seats are in a 40-20-40 split and can be dropped electronically to increase the space to a total of up to 18-20 litres. You also have quite a big compartment to keep your toolkit, to keep the basket away, but it's not going to hold a spare wheel, which means there will be a space saver that will go in here. Generally, it is a matter of worry in most cars, but here with 1,820 litres of boot space, I don't think you should be worried at all. The E-Class All-Terrain will be available in only one variant, the 220D, which means that it is powered by the 1950cc 4-cylinder diesel engine. It puts out about 194 PS of power and 400 Newton meters of torque. Mercedes-Benz claims that standstill to 100 comes up in about 8 seconds. So you see the performance figures, the power and torque outputs, they are on par with the other 2-litre engined SUVs in this space. The The engine is mated to the slick 9G-tronic 9-speed automatic transmission. While the gearbox is a little bit slow to respond when you go pedal to the metal, it reacts quite quickly to part throttle inputs. This nature needs getting used to when you're driving around the bends or on off-road trails. The easiest way out is to use the paddle shifters. The gearbox puts all the power down to the road via the 4MATIC all-wheel drive system, and Mercedes-Benz claims that the tuning of the 4MATIC is derived from all the learnings from the GLE. It splits torque between the front and rear wheels quite discreetly and without imparting much understeer when pushing the car hard on tarmac or off it. Compared to the squisher setup in the E-Class sedan, the E-Class all-terrain has a slightly firmer ride. Even in its comfort mode, the air suspension tends to offer a slightly firmer ride. Now, if you tackle the potholes, the undulations in the road at slow speeds like I'm doing right now, it's all fine. But if you hit the ruts, the joints, the sharper bumps at slightly higher speeds, things start getting a little noisy. It starts thudding and crashing through all of it. Not that it gives you a bone-jarring ride. None of that really gets translated into shocks inside the cabin, but it's just a little noisy. When the going gets tougher, an all-terrain mode exclusive to this car raises the suspension by a further 20mm at speeds of up to 35 km an hour to prevent scraping the underbody. Finally, this is an E-Class in which you will not have to worry about or fret about having to scrape your underbelly every time you're going over a speed hump. That said, despite that jacked up ride height, it will not give you a commanding view of the road. If you want that sort of a thing, you will have to go with an SUV, something like the GLE. This is more E-Class-like to drive, more car-like to drive, more crossover-ish in that sense. Like I always say, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. The firm character of the suspension translates to good fun around the twisties by giving the car a pretty flat ride. The short wheelbase also makes for nimble handling dynamics compared to its saloon counterpart. And turn-ins are surprisingly quick despite the tall tires. I quite like the steering setup on this thing. It isn't too heavy, it isn't too light, it doesn't feel over-assisted, it feels quite precise. It's quite communicative, the feedback is quite good. Of course, it is not something that you would get in a BMW. It's not as communicative as what you would get in a BMW, but for a Mercedes-Benz, it is surprisingly good. Once you get used to the behavior of the drivetrain and the various driving modes, you realize that the E-Class all-terrain is quite a delightful car to drive, and its ability to go off the beaten path makes it a rather sweet deal. That said, the E-Class segment is largely populated by businessmen who are driven around. Those who need better off-road capabilities go with the flow and settle for an SUV instead. Despite this clear demarcation, Mercedes-Benz hasn't shied away in the past from introducing various E-Class based body styles like the coupe and the convertible to the Indian market, all in an effort to provide the consumer with a bouquet of options. The E-Class all-terrain too falls in line with that school of thought, and in that it targets a niche audience. It quite nicely plugs the gap between the saloon and the SUV, but it does so with a unique character that does not feel like a compromise between the two body styles.